This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider and my guest today is Dr. Manuela Powell, although I like calling her Power, as we just learned. Manuela is a former breast cancer surgeon. She comes from Brazil, but she worked in the famous Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City for a very long time until she decided to become a coach. Hi, Manuela, and welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, Manuela, I hear you are a mindset coach.
Yes.
And I'm very curious to find out about that. Will you tell me a little bit about your work as a doctor and now as a coach?
Sure. I'm originally from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I now live in Austin, Texas with my husband and my two boys. They're 2.5 and 5. And I used to be a cancer surgeon for a long time, as you said. I think it was in total almost 20 years, but who's counting? And for reasons we are going to find out later, I decided to change my career. Well, actually, the actual reason was just having kids and all that stuff. But, things changed in my life with a conversation with my mom. And I decided to, after a good while thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Because quitting medicine was one decision, and then finding another career was a whole other ordeal. So luckily, my husband suggested I one day was like, why don't you hire a coach? And I was so clueless that I said, but I don't play any sports. Why would I hire a coach? I swear to God, I did not know that life coaching was a thing. So he's like, no, a career coach, a life coach. I was like, oh, okay, let me look that up. And I started looking. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I love it. And I did hire a career coach for a few sessions, but I figured out that this was what I was born to do. So here we are now.
That's fantastic, Manuela. And what is mindset coaching?
So there's several different kinds of coaching, right? You can do business coaching. For instance, someone who comes to your company and helps your company achieve their business goals. You can have a weight loss coach. You can have, any sort of coaching. Mindset is basically things that require you to change your mind and you to understand how you choose your own thoughts, and that creates your reality. And I think this is the basis of my coaching, is just really figuring out how you are responsible for your thoughts and for your feelings and how that can make a huge difference. And basically, you can create the life you want with that.
Will you take me as a client, please? That sounds great. I think 2 years ago, I discovered this idea of programming and how we are programmed by our environment and our parents and our system and our surroundings to think in a certain way. And I've been very consciously trying to recognize these running programs that I've inherited and just reprogram my thinking. I do this by affirmations. I'm doing my affirmations before I meditate, but it's definitely a very, very hard point to pinpoint these mindsets and these programs that are so deep inside, and that because they are so taken for granted by us, it's very hard to recognize them, and especially where they come from.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of this is that once you start to see them, it's hard to unsee them. So once you start noticing and really asking yourself, is this belief mine, or is this something that I repeated my whole life because someone, got implanted in my brain, and then I just say this over and over again. But if you stop and you start to really analyze, you might find out that it's not true, and you don't think that. One very common belief is like, oh, money is really hard to get, right? Like money doesn't go on trees. And we hear that kind of stuff all the time. And you might decide one day in your life that that's not true, because there's plenty of people who are working 20 hours a week or 4-hour weeks, whatever it is, and they're making a lot of money. So it can't be that hard, right? So you just if you just change that belief, you can. It's just the same thing. It's just a thought in your brain. A belief is nothing more than a thought that you think all the time and you don't really question. So that's basically the whole, you just literally said exactly what mindset coaching is just getting all these limiting beliefs or the set of beliefs that you have and analyzing them and seeing if they serve you or not. And if they don't, just choosing new ones.
I have to work on the one that artists and creative people have to be poor. That's how
Right,
I'm raised.
that is another one. Exactly.
That runs in my family, the belief. But anyway, what's interesting is watching, if you have kids, it's interesting for me watching Kai and him repeating certain things where I'm just like, oh, this,
Yes.
we implanted this. He just hears us say this. We have to be so careful what we're saying, you know?
Yeah, but it's just good that we're doing this because, I say things to my kid now that it's kind of like, hey, you control your brain. Because it says, something like, oh, I'm scared or something like that. I can say, hey, you can tell your brain that you're not scared. And scared is not a good reason because he's small, but like something else, right? That he knows how to do this now. And he will say, hey, brain, this is what we're going to do now. I can't do it. It's especially with the I can't do this, right? He will do. And I said, yeah, with this attitude, you really can't. So now he knows when I say that, he's like, yeah, brain, we can do it. I was like, yeah, maybe you won't be able to do it, but at least you can try.
I love this, Manuela. Lesson number 1 from today's episode. Just tell your brain it can. I'm telling my brain right now, brain, yes, you can be creative, make art, and earn a lot of money with it.
It sounds silly, but in a nutshell, that's exactly how you do it. It just requires a lot of practicing and it requires you actually believing it. So.
But Manuela, you told me about a new project that you're preparing now. Would you want to tell us anything about that?
Oh, yeah. I am going to, I don't know if this is going to be out by the time this podcast is out, but I'm starting a Facebook group, which I'm very excited about because I plan to really share a lot of really knowledge and try to even, if people are interested, even having some live coaching in that. So I'm very excited about it. Sure. And it is about motherhood. The name is Audacious Motherhood. And it's for women who feel like they have lost themselves after motherhood. So, to help them go back to themselves and stop being everything for everyone and stop trying to be perfect and all those things that got implanted in our brains, right? That we should and must do. And please, let's stop this madness and let's just, teach our kids that, yes, we also have needs and we also have wants and we can still be a wonderful mother, even though we have those needs and wants.
This is fantastic. I'm very excited about this, Manuela. Thank you for doing that. I wish when I became a mother, I found support like that. Thankfully, I had my friends and my mom. But it's hard when it's a hard transition from being a me to being an us. But apropos motherhood, let's talk about Mama Andrea.
Yes.
Tell us about Mama Andrea.
Oh, man, where to start? So my mom is an extremely, I would say, powerful woman. She is very assertive and I think super smart, super smart, and which is a blessing and a curse for being her daughter because it was like, oh, man, everything that she says is true. And then going back to what we said about the mindset, some things are just not what I believe as an adult, right? But these things were really hard for me to figure out by myself because she was always right, and I trusted her so much, and I obviously still do, but.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but she's from Brazil, and she's a psychologist, you told me, which must be extra tricky to have as a mom.
She did go to school when I was in medical school by the time. So she raised me and my two brothers. And then after we were good and grown, she was like, well, now I'm going to do something for myself. Yay, go, Mom. And she decided to go back to school, which was wonderful. And she studied psychologist. And right away, it was amazing because right away she got super successful. She had a full practice and charged a lot of money for her sessions. So yeah, it was amazing to see. And it's really something that I keep in mind now and something that I want people to know. It's like, hey, first of all, if you decide to be a stay-at-home mom and then when you're 40-something decide to go back to school after your kids are grown or even after that, you can do that and still be successful. So that's one of the good things that I've learned from her, for sure.
That's very reassuring. So she was in her 40s when she went to school.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I think it was one day I did that math, and I think she was 44 or something like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think something, or when she graduated, something like that, and it was a 4-year course. So, yeah, so definitely in her 40s, and and graduated, and right away, started working for one of the hospitals in Brazil, and also opened her private practice, and was like very, very successful. So that was amazing.
Fantastic. But then you told me she quit after her husband passed away?
Yeah. So I think when my father died, it was a little too much. They were married for 40 years. He died, I think, maybe 3 months before their 40th anniversary. So I don't know. I think and this is me, I don't know if that's true or not, but I just think it might have been hard for her to deal with other people's problems while she was grieving. And maybe after a while, she's just like, you know what? I think I'm good being retired. Maybe that was it. I don't know. Yeah. So it's not that she's totally retired right now. She still takes care of a lot of real estate that my grandmother had. And now my grandmother just died last year. So it all came to her. So, she still has a lot to do, but I feel like she has way more time to travel and do the things that she also enjoys doing.
How old is she now, Manuela?
She is going to be 70 this year, although you would never tell because she looks very young.
That's amazing. I think that's because she started her life, late. Maybe she's now she's actually in her 50s right now.
Yeah, seriously,
she's like 20 years behind. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope this is genetic because I don't feel like almost 47 at all. So I hope that passes down to me.
So, talking about lessons, you already mentioned a lesson from her, actually, about how you can create a whole new successful career in your mid-40s, which is fantastic. It's one of the lessons I learned from my mom when she reinvented herself in her 60s, early 60s, actually. Wow. Any other things? I know that you have one big lesson.
Yeah, so there was a big one that, so this happened, just a little bit of background. As you mentioned, I had been at Sloan Kettering in New York, and then I decided after doing a lot of advanced training, because I'd done all my training in Brazil, and then I practiced medicine there for a while, and then I moved to the US, and then went to Sloan Kettering as a fellow, which is after you do medical school, you do residency, and then you do a fellowship, which is the most advanced form of training. So I did that, and I decided I wanted to go back and do a residency, a general surgery residency, which is 5 years of pure abuse. It's absolutely horrible, and everybody told me it would be horrible. I was like, are you insane? Don't do that, because you already did that. Why are you going to do this again? And I was like, no, you know what? But because to be board certified as a surgeon in the US, I would have to do that. So I decided to apply to do the first year, because you can do either the first year or apply for the 5 years. And I did, let me try the first and we'll see how it goes. So it started in July. So by December, my mother said, hey, I'm going to go to New York because I just want to talk to you. And of course I didn't have time. I woke up at 4:30 every morning, 6 days a week, and worked until, I don't even know, maybe 7, 8 p.m. every day for, 6 days a week. So there was not a lot of free time. So she came over, and we had not a lot of time to talk either because I was exhausted, obviously. But the thing that she wanted to ask me was, she said, hey, so next year you're going to turn 40. And once or twice you mentioned in your life that you wanted to have kids. So I just wanted to ask you if that's still a thing that you want to do, because if you want to have biological kids, right, you can also, I can always adopt later. But if you want to try to have your kids, biologically, you, of course, don't have the rest of your life. And if you're going to do 4 more years of this, you're going to be 45 when you're done. So the chance would be even smaller. So I just wanted to ask you to stop and think about it, because it seems like you haven't had the time to do that. which was 100% true. And if people who have these crazy careers like medicine might totally relate to this, which is you do one thing and then there's the next thing and then there's the next, and this is the next step. And then and you just go. And you don't really stop to think, wait, is this what I actually want to do? I think most of us actually don't do this at all in our lives, but I think with these kind of careers, it's even harder. So it was really amazing because it didn't take me long to like, oh, no. I actually absolutely don't want this at all. I do want to have kids, and I would love to have my biological kids. If I don't, I would do something else, but I would love to at least try. So just with that question, she really completely changed the course of my life, because then instead of continuing the 4 further years, I just finished my contract, which was 6 more months, and decided to go in a different direction, which was not coaching yet. It was not abandoning medicine. That came later. But it was, I'm going to go back to Brazil, and I actually decided to do an artificial insemination and be a single mother, because, it was not like, oh yeah, I want to have kids. Let me go and find a partner right now and immediately have kids. So I did that. And I didn't do the artificial insemination because the day that I actually completed all the steps, like the day right before, the next cycle I would try for the first time, I actually met someone, which is not my husband, but it kind of derailed the whole plan, because it was like, oh man, it'll be so much easier with another person. And then the relationship didn't work. It was a couple of months, 3 months, whatever, but it didn't work. And I decided to take a sabbatical to just go back to that mindset of being a single mother. And during that sabbatical, I went to Hawaii to be a volunteer there. And then I met my husband. So really, but the whole thing started with that, hey, do we want to continue doing this? And if yes, and she actually said, like, if you do, that's fine. There's no problem if you want to, your life be basically about work, which had been the case until then. But just make that a conscious decision, which I think that was the brilliant thing, is just, just choosing. And if it's that's what you want, go for it. You don't have to have kids, but right. But if you do want to, maybe just stop and consider that for a minute.
So just stop and think about what you're doing in your life. And as you said, make a conscious decision.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it was huge. And it's funny how I don't remember exactly how long it took me to realize that, no, I didn't want to continue what I was doing. But in my mind, it was like a second. It was like, she said that. I was like, oh yeah, no, absolutely not. I don't want to do this anymore. This is horrible and I'm miserable and this is absolutely makes no sense at all, so because like doing 4 more years of something that I was just doing to get a piece of paper, that makes no sense. I'm a great surgeon. I'm trained at the best cancer hospital in the world, and I'm not going to do all the other kinds of surgery. I'm just going to do breast cancer surgery. So why am I going through this whole thing? So that they can say, yeah, sure, now you can, so it was just a lot of, again, beliefs that I just believed without stopping to think about them. And when I started, I was like, hey, that is not even true. I don't necessarily need to be board certified to be a surgeon. I think it's going to be way harder if I want to live in the U.S. and be a surgeon without a board certification. I think today this is actually true. You do have to be, or else you really won't find a job. But at the time, it wasn't true. And I could just go back to my country and practice medicine there. So it was not it was not true in the end, right? It was a belief that was just something that, when looked a little closely, was just not true.
When I decided to quit my corporate job after 12 years, I had to burn down. Or burn out. I had to burn down. I burned down completely. No, I had a very serious case of burnout where I just was not able to function at all for a few weeks. And, my body and my mind rang the alarm bell for me. I wish my mom did earlier. She tried in a much gentler way, and she always very much respected my decisions. But your mom saved you, I think, a very serious
absolutely
case of burnout, which is not
burnout
fun.
is really, as much as we think that burnout is a physical thing, it's just like, oh, you're working so much that you're going to die. I can tell you before that in my life, I had always worked a lot because, medical school and residency and being a surgeon and all that. I worked 120 hours a week for decades probably. And I was sick a lot, and, all these things were happening. So now I joke because I say your body and the universe are just sending you these little nudges. It's like, hey, maybe pay attention to this, maybe do that. And I was like, hey, don't let your body or the universe just kind of slap you into into really figuring out that is not the best course of action. Because I think burnout, more than physical, is also very much mental. You might not be even working so many hours, but just the stress and the fact that that's not the thing that you should be doing, although you're not recognizing it. Right. That's the part that really makes you burn out.
For me, what I recognized as the major part of burnout is your work not
the lack of fulfillment.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the major cause.
Yeah. And you can see people who you can see, so many doctors are burnt out. Yeah, that's true. But there's so many doctors who are not burnt out, even right now during this whole mess.
Yeah.
So why aren't these people? And I have a whole spiel about that burnout thing, but I think it's very much way more mental than it is physical, because you can be doing something physical that is, I don't know, actors, for instance, they work, if they're filming a movie, they work a bajillion hours a day and no one's falling apart because of that, just because they're doing what they love and whatever, right? So it's not just the number of hours and the physical requirement.
Manuela, I want to go back to it's never too late. In your mom's lessons, it was about building a whole new career. May I ask you, when did you have your children then? Because you mentioned you were already 40 when you just decided to change your life.
Absolutely. I met my husband when I was 40, and we got married pretty much before even a year. And I had my first kid at 42 and my second at 44, which shocked even me, if you must know. Because the second one especially, because we decided to have a second one, and I thought, maybe, I'm already, how old I was? I was 43, and I was like, well, let's try for 6 months and see what happens, and then we'll figure out. And literally 3 weeks later, I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, I guess we're having, I was very surprised. So
I love taking away the stress of the biological clock from women. I love that. Really, really want women to know, young women, that they have time. And for me, it was very good to become a mother later, because I realized that I'm a much better mother now than I would have been in my 30s.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And I wouldn't change anything in my life before, because I really like where it is right now. And I know that every little change would have changed completely the course of it. So, but I agree that the way I had my life before, with working so much, and it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I loved being a doctor and I loved working a lot, but just not as much when I decided that, if I want to have kids, I don't want to work so much anymore. So that's when I moved to coaching. But I agree that I am a way better mother now than I would have been if I had been younger.
I want to go back to Mama Andrea. We learned some very, very interesting things from her and important things from her. But we talked about, is there something that she was not able to teach you? Are there any lessons you learned yourself that you think are important?
Well, not necessarily that she didn't teach me, but there was something that, funny enough, I think it was the one thing that I always like, oh no, I don't believe that one, which was interesting given what I said, that it was hard for me to not believe everything she said. But there was one specifically that I remember that way back when, I remember her saying that, but most recently when I decided to change careers, when I decided to quit medicine because I had my kids and I was like, I don't want to work that much anymore. So I started looking for options, and I started looking for other clinical options that wouldn't be as demanding. And then after that, I couldn't really find anything. I started looking for non-clinical options, and I mentioned to her, I was like, I look at these things like working at pharma and user review, whatever it was. And I was like, I don't want to do, it just doesn't, I don't want to do it. It just sounds so boring and something that I would not really like, or medical writing or research. I'm like, no, I've done these things and I don't like them. And she said, a lot of times, like, people don't necessarily love their jobs, your work is just something you do, and then you go and you get your money, and then you go do stuff that you do, that you like. And that was never, I was always like, no, 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 no. I don't want to believe that one. And maybe it's because my work was always so much my whole life until I had kids. I was like, no, my work is my whole life. I need to love it. And I always loved medicine. So that was the one that I'm glad I never agreed with, because that would have meant that I would have gotten a whatever other job, non-clinical medical job that would have given me a big salary, but it would just switch the problem, because I would still not be happy, with the job. So I don't see how you can feel fulfilled and not let that spill into your personal life if you hate your job. I just don't see that.
It's the trick here is it's very hard for some people to find what they do want to do and what fulfills them. I think that's the biggest trick in life. I was lucky that writing found me, basically, but I know that many people unhappy but cannot find what it is that they would like, that would fulfill them. And this is where you need a coach. Yeah.
And it really depends where, depending on the situation you're in. We're very fortunate to live in a civilized place, and, I have shelter and I have food, I have all these basic things. So of course this is a very first world problem, obviously, right? But I think there's also a lot of, I just can't figure out what I love. But did you try? Did you actually go after the thing that you wanted to do? Or were you too scared to let go of your big salary, your giant house, your switching cars every year? So there is that. I see a lot of that with a lot of doctors that say, oh, but I can't, what am I going to do? I can't just not work. I'm like, wait, you worked as a doctor for 1,000,000 years. Don't you have savings? You can not work for a little bit so that you can figure out, or you can start a side job. You can work part-time. Like, there's so many options that not everybody explores, and they just use all these excuses for why they can't be happy, when in reality, they're not just trying hard enough, or they don't want to let go of things that they feel are very important in their lives.
It takes courage. I think it takes a lot of courage to dare to change things and to change things.
Yeah.
Manuela, do we have any other lessons from Mama Andrea?
Oh, I'm sure we do. Nothing that comes to mind right away. Oh, actually, no. You know what? A good one came to mind. I remember she's saying to me once, and that never left my mind. She said, you know what? There's some things in life that if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to do them. And one of them is having kids. It's like, if you wait until the day you're ready, you're not going to have kids. And now being a mom, I agree 100% with that statement, because there's no being ready. I was literally, they were kicking me out of the hospital with a newborn, and was like, no. I don't think you can do this. What are you doing? Are you insane? You're letting me leave?
I was the same. I was like, can I stay here a little longer? They're like, nope.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, no, you're never going to be ready. And I think it's the same for changing careers, for launching a new business, for so many things. You kind of have to build the plane as you're flying it. So for a lot of things, right? So that was the lesson that I got from that one. And it was something that came to my mind many, many times in my life.
I love this one.
It's a good one.
Thank you. Do we have more?
I think now we're done.
Okay. But I want to ask you something, because I believe most of my listeners are women. And we did, in our previous conversation, touch on this topic. As a breast cancer surgeon, is there any advice or wisdom you can give to women? We talked about stress and cancer a little bit.
Yeah, I do believe that, because we say, oh, stress causes disease, that is so vague. Nobody knows what that means. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's stressful. I mean, there's a pandemic right now, and the economy and this and that. I mean, I can't do anything about these things. So obviously stress causes diseases in a sense. But I think specifically cancer, I think there is a very, very good correlation with the stress of living a life that you're really not completely fulfilled, or that something is missing, or that you're not being true to your values. I think it's the best way to put it. And sometimes, again, it's really out of your control. If you live in a war zone, there's really not much you can do, I guess, right? So that is an extreme situation. But for us who live in basically safe environments and we have our basic needs met, when we don't have that fulfillment and the self-actualization and living in alignment with what we believe, I think that is one thing that can really increase your chances of having some of these diseases.
Thank you. I just wanted to send out a message because this is a whole new episode of another podcast.
Yeah. For sure.
Manuela, I would like to recap these amazing lessons we learned from you and from Mama Andrea.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, number one was stop and think about your life.
Yeah.
Stop and take time and look at it and think about it. Is this what you really want? Number two is consciously decide what it is that you really want. Number three, but actually for me, number one is you can create a successful career in your 40s. It's never too late. Then I have don't go with the flow. Just check your own box.
Yes.
You are the boss. I have don't wait for the right moment. We talked about having kids or changing a career. For some things in life, if you start waiting for the right moment, it will never happen. Just go for it. And then I finally have the lesson she kind of did not teach you, which is that, yes, people should like their jobs. There are jobs out there. There is work that can fulfill you, and you just have to find it.
Yeah.
And then I have a little tip on the side here for myself, which says, tell your brain, hey, brain. I wrote down in quotation marks, hey, brain. And I promise you, Manuela, I'm going to write a little Post-it. I'm a big Post-it fan. I'm going to write a little Post-it to my brain and tell my brain, hey, brain, yes, you can. Whatever.
Yeah, you're the boss of it. Exactly.
Yes. Thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Anna. It was a pleasure.
Many lessons. And I'm very excited about your Facebook group, Audacious Motherhood.
Yeah.
I can't wait to become a member and see what's happening in there.
Oh, good. I'll be glad to have you.
Thank you, Manuela.
Thank you.
If you enjoy Thank You, Mama, and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider. That's Tajder. This was Thank You, Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.